Hi folks, welcome to today's color process video. Right, so if you remember the last process video, I say that if you remember it, geez, it's only 2 days ago, but yeah, if you watched the last process video, you'll remember I was talking about how repetitive it was coloring that comic because of obviously the repetitive nature of the artwork. And today's comic is the complete opposite of that. Even though there are repeated elements with the seal in the three panels, yeah, it doesn't feel quite as samey to me. So that like the first panel in this comic was a lot of fun to work on because just little thing, all the different things going on, like the whale, the penguin, the seal, like just rendering the ice flow that the seal is on, the water, adding in that bit of a reflection in the water beneath the whale. Just little things like that really help make the color process fun for me. Um, Now the rest of the comic isn't all that complex. I mean, it's just the seal with a bit of shading added and a bit of blue added to just add the impression of a background. But sometimes that's all you need. I mean that's something I'm becoming more and more comfortable with each subsequent comic, like knowing when to leave things be and not to worry too much about how good the colors look. I mean, sometimes good enough is all you need, and this is one of those cases where, I mean, in the past, those the last three panels of the seal, I would have been doing my best to make them look way more interesting and add like nice painterly effects or something to the background. But no, I thought what I did here, it works just fine, and that's really that's all you need a lot of the time. So I was mentioning in the last process video that in most of my comics I like to go for kind of a more painterly look to the backgrounds to kind of replicate the look of like animated shows and movies and things where, as I mentioned, the backgrounds have this painterly look and then the characters are a lot more flat on top of that. And the first panel here is a good example of my attempt to do that. Now, saying that, the characters, I added just a touch of just a touch of a gradient to them to give the impression of like light reflecting up from the both the water and the ice, just to round things out a bit more. But overall the characters are still fairly flat shaded, except for the whale, of course. With the whale, I kind of wanted the whale to look more real than the seal and the penguin. Like have them kind of look more cartoony, and the whale just be basically just like a bog standard orca whale. Like there's something about that makes it feel more real and dangerous. I find when you do that. The reflections in the water, that's a really simple thing I do, where I add a layer on top of the water and then using the paint tool, which is a gouache brush, obviously a simulation of a gouache brush. I select some colors from the subject that's getting reflected here, of course, being the orca, and I will just lightly and roughly just like kind of do an approximation of a reflection in the water. Like, I mean, it's not all that accurate, but it does the job. And once I have those colors laid down, I reduce the opacity of the reflection layer so that it's more a part of the water, so it's not quite as visible. And it's a really nice little effect. You know, it just helps ground things a bit more when you do that. Although when I look at it, it's actually not maybe all that realistic that such a clear reflection is in the water when um, the water is very obviously being splashed around the whale. So if there was any kind of a reflection in the water, it would be far more distorted than it looks here. But I'm sure most people won't notice that. But I say that like that's a good excuse. Like that's something I will have to keep in mind in future, that if I do have a similar scene to this in a future comic, I will need to take that into account and try and uh, try and make the reflection look a lot more distorted, like it's being affected by the water. Another thing, I'm kind of stumbling over my words a lot. I'll try not to keep doing that. Um, Another thing I did here was I changed the overlay colors um, to a more kind of bluish color, because obviously this being set in an icy kind of location, I wanted it to look extra extra cold. So just adding a touch of blue to the scene um, obviously really helps with that. And yeah, that's pretty much everything. So I will leave it at that, and I will talk to you at the next video. Take care.